at some point they could go down a story beat of Ellie following in Joel's footsteps.
I think this is showing off some interesting themes because I've been wondering what exactly Ellie's arc is potentially going to be. And I think that we're seeing some kind of interesting parallels between Ellie as well as the organizations like WLF and maybe the Seraphites.
I feel like I would have a lot of questions. I'm like, oh, you're pregnant. How long? Who's the father? I wouldn't instantly be like, all right, hand down the pants, let's go. I'm so aroused.
Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Mark and I are talking about the hit post-apocalyptic TV show, The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 4, Day 1, so spoilers are ahead. And if you're enjoying our content, then a like would be appreciated. If you don't want to miss a single one of our videos, then just be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications. And with that, what are your kind of overall thoughts?
So, I feel like I was really digging the show the first several episodes, and I think this is the first episode that's kind of made me feel like it's definitely not as good as the first season. I think the first season was a masterclass. And I also feel like the games were received this way, where the first one was really great and the second one may have not been as liked. I think overall the premise of what's going on is good. It just feels like a little bit of dragging their feet. And then I feel like we got a lot in this episode that felt very rushed. Like it just seemed like everything got jammed at the end, and I don't know if motivations of the characters really fit for me, of like how things were planned out or played out. Overall, I think it's still good and enjoyable, and I know that seasons have sometimes a lull, but I feel like the last episode and this episode could have kind of been maybe combined. It felt like a lot of retreading of the second half of the last episode.
It's interesting. I feel different from you. I think that I think this is showing off some interesting themes because I've been wondering about what exactly Ellie's arc is potentially going to be. Because we do want to see some kind of growth. And I think that we're seeing some kind of interesting parallels between Ellie, her potential arc for this season, as well as maybe, the organizations like WLF and maybe the Seraphites and kind of what they're going through as well. So I enjoyed it. I liked the kind of little bit slow in the beginning and then some hectic aspect in the middle and then this kind of touching moment in the end. I enjoyed that.
I mean, overall, I didn't hate the episode. I just felt it was a little especially at the end, I think is where I'm having the most problem, where it just felt like everything got rushed. All three things, it was like a pregnancy that we dealt with, feelings that we dealt with, and her immunity. And it just, that all felt very rushed to me, where it feels like it could have been one thing at the beginning or the end of the last episode, then another thing. And I think that's ultimately why I wasn't the biggest fan of this episode. But it also would make sense too if the rest of the episodes are going to be jam-packed with what's happening with the wolves and whatnot. So I do understand it, but it just felt a little rushed.
For me, I think that the reason that everything kind of came out all at once for me was organic. And so I was totally fine with it. Especially if they continue to give us interesting things going forward. I'm perfectly fine with that. To me, it made sense. Even if maybe I would want things like that to be kind of teased out a little bit, I thought it was very believable how it played out. To me, it didn't feel like they were trying to force all of these things together, but rather that's the way that it might happen in this crazy situation.
That's true. I think my biggest hang up is just that we're dealing with her immunity.
Yeah.
She says I'm pregnant, and then they just they're all right, let's get down. And I just feel I don't know if the get down moment was there, I don't know if that was earned. I feel I would have a lot of questions. I'm oh, you're pregnant. How long? How long have you known? Who's the father? I wouldn't instantly be like, all right, hand down the pants, let's go. I'm so aroused. Also, you thought that I was about to turn into an infected 2 minutes ago. I know you're happy that I'm not, so I guess there's a lot of emotions there, but
that for me was the impetus of like, I think that this was an extremely emotional moment for Dina, right? She thinks that she is going to have to kill her, best friend and somebody that she's in love with. And I don't think she even necessarily knew if she could live a life with this person, because people like her mom had told her, like, no, that's not okay. And so I think that, like, subconsciously she'd felt these feelings, but she didn't necessarily understand that idea of like, I could live this out. It doesn't just have to be like a fun fling. And so she's been kind of holding that in, not completely understanding it. And then she thinks that she's not only going to lose this person, but that she herself is going to have to kill that person. Like, that's a lot emotionally to deal with. And she's holding this secret that she hasn't been able to tell anybody. So it's like everything is bottled up and like welling up and getting to that bursting point. And then there is this emotional release of realizing that what Ellie said is true, realizing that she doesn't have to lose Ellie. And then in going through all of that, potentially realizing that, like, I love this person and I love this person enough that I might want to be with this person for the rest of my life. And so like it all comes out, and then just, I don't think that she knew any other way to express herself than how she did.
All right. That's fair. After hearing your explanation, I do feel it does make it a little bit better for me.
Yeah. And then if, like, from Ellie's perspective, like, if she didn't know if her friend was going to shoot her, she barely makes it through. She's secretly been in love with this person, but she's thought that, like, this whole thing has just been Dina just kind of having fun with her, not necessarily taking it seriously.
Right.
And she finally gets that affection back for real.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you finally had that kind of moment and somebody comes at you physically after kind of all of that happening, I think like the physical emotions would kind of win over. And then once all of the, like, once all the hormones have kind of died down and your like brain can get through, then you start asking questions. And then she did. She's like, well, how do you know?
Right. How do you know? Are you sure?
Is it his?
Right. I love the potential of, I know that this season follows the game. And I don't know if it's going to follow the whole game, if they're going to break it into 2 seasons. What are they going to do after this? But I like the potential of, at some point, they could go down a story beat of Ellie following in Joel's footsteps. Like, Joel was, father, and Ellie could, potentially raise this child, as father, whatever. That could be where Joel failed, in keeping his original daughter safe, in, having to lie to Ellie. She could potentially walk a better path than Joel with this child, as well as potentially, I guess that, never mind. I was going to say, and the baby might be immune because Ellie's the dad. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's not how that works.
I wonder whether or not this has any impact on her current goal for revenge. Because for me, I don't actually love this whole revenge idea. Yes, I love Joel. I think it sucked to lose him. It definitely sucked to lose him that way. That was awful for him to be tortured up until the end. But I'm not somebody who believes that revenge is the answer. So it kind of saddens me that is what Ellie has given herself into. And I think that even when even when Joel did terrible things, it was not out of revenge, it was out of love and protection, And this is kind of dangerous territory where we're kind of seeing it live out with like the Seraphites and WLF, where there's like these cycles of revenge that happen. And we're kind of seeing the same thing play out with, Abby and Ellie.
Right. If
and so
she
it's
kills
like,
Abby, then it's going to cause another thing to revenge.
Where does that stop? So I'm wondering whether or not having some purpose and like something that maybe she can use what she learned from Joel to take care of this baby and have that be a way to carry on Joel's legacy versus seeking out revenge.
Right. I mean, definitely it seems a lot more dangerous now to continue this. I mean, it was always dangerous, but when you're only risking your own lives, but the fact that, Dina is pregnant now. And so the complications that come from that of like, we've seen that she's been dealing with looks like morning sickness that makes her a bit of a liability in these situations. And I think it does give a lot of like interesting story beats that we can hit. And hopefully that is ultimately what Ellie decides to do, but it does seem like she is still on the path of vengeance.
Yes.
Speaking of Isaac and the Seraphites, I'm very interested in this storyline. Like I'm very interested in Isaac as a character. I think that he is very mysterious, but also like I want to know his motivations. Like what are his goals? Like we still don't know like if the Seraphites are necessarily evil. We also don't like the wolves. Like so it's like I don't know what side to root for in their debacle.
And it's interesting because it seems like they were the repressed from Fedra, so you want to root for them. It seems like possibly both sides were repressed, like, disseminating any kind of pamphlets, regardless of if it was for, WLF or if it was, this religious group, wasn't okay. And so it's interesting seeing that Isaac broke out of Fedra because he felt like they were suppressing people. And it sounds like Abby was talking about his teachings of like somebody that, wouldn't hurt an unarmed person.
Mm-hmm.
But now it seems like he's potentially become kind of what he hates. And I think that maybe that might point to like these cycles of violence of, they both sides keep hurting each other so much that they think that the only way to avoid the pain anymore is going to be like to completely take out the other side, and so it's gone from trying to protect yourself to crazy violence, where people are getting strung up with like their entrails coming out. Like, I don't think that's probably how any of this stuff started.
Yeah. And it seems like, with the accusation of teaching the kids to hold guns to be like, we weren't going after your children, but then you're teaching them to kill us. So we are obligated to kill children and we don't want to. And, similarly, what we saw with the previous Seraphites, that they did kill the little girl. She was given a hammer. She was given a weapon, but not, is it skewed that like Isaac is like, oh, they're shooting at us, but yet we saw the Seraphites give the young girl a hammer. So is Isaac blowing a proportion of like, oh, you're giving them guns? And it doesn't seem like their group uses guns. They have like bows and arrows and they seem very like primitive. And then, if you have guns, you can totally beat bows and arrows pretty easily. So it does seem like the wolves have like an upper hand in this battle, and the Seraphites might just be defending themselves.
I mean, to me, it sounds like even if one side drew first blood, or not, and whether or not that was over a misconception or not. Like, I think where they've kind of arrived to now, I don't think that either side could be considered innocent at this point.
Correct.
I mean, I think we've seen wars like this where we, the US, think that we are, stepping in to protect a country or protect a people or whatever. And as we're going through villages, some of the like women and children who look unarmed and helpless turn out to have bombs or whatever. And then this happens enough times, and now the soldiers start getting kind of like itchy trigger fingers for anybody, even if it is the person that they think they're supposed to be protecting, and that's kind of what this seems like, where it's like it's really getting into the ugliness of war and like these cycles of violence.
Yeah. I am interested in who they are talking about. They talk about the Seraphites. There's this woman-like figure, and it seems that she was a real person, and it seems like people before the Seraphites know of who she was. So this must be like some figure that died during this post-apocalyptic time. So I'm very curious if it's somebody we know, if it's like, maybe like one of the leaders of the Fireflies or something. But I think who she is, the little crypticness of it, I think it might be somebody we know.
And then I kind of wonder about the message, and like, feel her love sounds like a positive message, but to be written in the blood of your enemies in view of like people hanging with their entrails out, like that to me is like two very different things, so like I do wonder whether or not she preached something positive, but then at some point some people have taken it and are twisting it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and especially like if you think about the Seraphites as a whole, and if like maybe the top leaders have been killed through the WLF's activities, and so like it does maybe muddy the message, like a game of telephone, from where it started to after going through this war with the wolves, what it's become, and like how diluted the message was previously. Like, it did seem like it came from a place of love. Feel her love. She will protect you. She'll guide you. And then it looks like the Seraphites chose to attack them in Washington. And so it sets up some cool dynamics of what we could see these groups in the coming episodes. So I am excited to see how some of this plays out.
Yeah, I am too.
But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you folks so much for joining along with us. Come back next week as we do The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 5. We look forward to having you. Until then, my name is Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.